talk to people directly in the community with the sort of resources you have in the government to do that. It's interesting. I mean, from the other complexity, of course, is from my point of view. I've got I guess a small team of people who do human rights legal policy. There's absolutely no capacity for us to really ourselves consult in that way. And also, of course, we don't have the policy responsibility for a lot of the coalface type problems that the people you're talking about are dealing with. So we have that sort of chunk of the policy process that develops the legal aspects of it, not the policy that falls within the FAXIA portfolio or the health portfolio or so on. So from my point of view, it seems to me the best thing for me to do. I mean, as I did, for example, this morning I met with James Farrell from Pilch this morning to talk about those issues. And I understand what you're saying, but that is still something that's really important for me to do, to educate myself about what the issues are in the policy space that I'm in. Right across government, it gets a bit more complicated than that. I mean, is for example, community cabinet a good way for people in the community to tell the government things that matter to them or not? I'm not sure what people feel about that. But you know.
With all respect, you haven't answered the question, and I was talking about in dollar terms how much you committed and how much, I think you'd be aware of that. I suspect the answer is probably nothing. I guess what makes me concerned about this process, and is that in consumer-only forums of substantive number of people there, 100 people in different communities, they're saying 77% of people accessing these very services that are there to supposedly protect and respect our human rights, they're reporting 77% of people are reporting they were subjected to cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment by the very bodies that are funded by government to protect and serve these disenfranchised communities. So,
yeah, I'm sorry. I mean,
I wouldn't really answer.
No, I can't tell you how much money the government spends on consulting. I just don't have the information, I'm afraid. I'm not even sure if it's possible to put it together.
Matt, thanks for noting that you're doing the good work of the government's decision to include sexual orientation in the upcoming bill, so that's good. But I've got a broader question for everyone on the panel, and that's about the other half of what this process is, and that's about business deregulation. How much of an impact is the outcomes of this project going to have based on the assessment of whether there's more, less, or the same amount of paperwork, time, energy and effort the business needs to do? So Matt, maybe you can comment on that bit. Troy, maybe you can comment on whether you think it should be about the time, energy, effort of business and what you can do to advocate for businesses on achieving good outcome. And I think the lady stole my thunder that I was going to ask Ewa about other indicators being reported. But maybe you want to comment as to whether you think that can be done at some point in the future, or how it should be done, or whether it should be something like the Australian Stock Exchange leading the way for an industry level.
Was that? Oh, okay. So I'm not quite sure which part of the question I should address really, but look, it's a very difficult.
Be made based on the need to deregulate the amount of time, energy, and effort of business. So we're going to cut back some protected attributes that we want in there because it's going to take too much work for business. That sort of thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, look, that's balancing the impact on business and the impact on the community and human rights is, of course, the classic balancing act that governments undertake, and the classic two constituencies that need to be balanced. And obviously, it's been done, I'm sure people would say, successfully or less successfully in terms of the expectation or the legal requirements to make adjustments that business have or not, depending on which type of discrimination it is and whether that balance is right. That's obviously, again, something that the consolidation project is looking at pretty closely. But where the cost falls, I suppose it'd be interesting to hear from Troy, how easy it is to come impacts and the extent to which you can take those sorts of things into account. It's very, very difficult, of course. And on one level, the anti-discrimination law is making a value statement about what employers should do and what they shouldn't have to do, and recognising how difficult it is in some circumstances to make reasonable adjustments or whatever it may be. On another level, it's got a very important role in I guess, business understanding what legal requirements are from a kind of educational point of view, leading them to think more about how they're going to do stuff better. All this stuff is difficult to quantify, of course. It's not a very good answer, is it? It's a good question.
Great question, Corey. Look, this doesn't seem to be working. We comply with reporting requirements, flex and change depending on how those things kind of come through. It's a simple matter of being very adaptable in terms of the changes that happen in this space, particularly for a company the size of ours. I'm not able to quantify the time and effort taken to do this stuff, but look, I think our structures are sufficiently sophisticated and flexible that they can meet those things as they come along. That probably sounds a bit flippant, but it is, it's kind of exactly where we sit in terms of meeting any obligations or other expectations as they arise.
I think from the agency's point of view, I mean, we don't set policy, we implement policy, and the government has a view about where the policy should sit between protecting or advancing the position of women, for example, in our space, and the burden on business. Our interest is that we want effective regulation, but I think it's fair to say currently the government is very concerned about business opposition to any proposed legislation. So in the current discussions we're having around our proposed legislation, there is a serious concern about how business might react to the manner in which the legislation was drafted. So, we're having this discussion to try and reach this balance. We certainly want to work with business. We don't want to, put ourselves in a position where business are opposed as opposed to amenable to doing what we'd like them to do. But we live within the reality of the policy settings that are handed to us. And that's why we think that we can get as good a results working in the influencing space as we can in the compliance space. So, for example, I've now announced a full restructure of the agency, and I'm looking at how I place our resources. And I'm certainly placing resources in one piece of the agency that is the non-compliance part of the agency, where we will work to build relationships and incentivise people to change. Because we think that through the compliance piece, not sure what the final outcome will be on the legislation, but we may have some limitations there. And that being the case, we have to get results, and we will get the results some way or the other. But we think working in the influencing space is an area where we can get some significant results.
I think we've got a question here, and then Jackie had a question a while ago.
This is maybe a question for Troy, and I suppose follow some of the comments that you made in response to that last question, address some issues that I wanted to raise. Troy, do you think that there's sufficient incentive from a business perspective to have some sort of an accreditation system, similar to, I don't know if you're aware, but for example, in the ACT Human Rights Act, there's an opt-in provision that allows private entities or entities that aren't covered by the obligations under that Act to opt in, and so be bound by that Act. Do you consider there's enough incentive from a business perspective?
Trouble hearing the last part of the question, but look, I said to someone earlier, just when we were chatting before the session, there's the business incentives around all of this work in the diversity and inclusion space are clear. They've been articulated, to death almost. From the point of view of Telstra, I don't know that we necessarily, what's the word? We get it. We kind of understand why we need to be doing this stuff. So that's okay. In terms of opting into